Hello everybody and welcome back to Samata on Bass. It's good to be back. What we're doing today is upgrading this Squier jazz bass, and I've been using this for a while now. It's proven to be very roadworthy. It's all stock. The pickups in this sound pretty good for stock pickups, but I've decided to actually make this active by installing an EMG J System, which we have right here. The one thing that I do like a lot about EMG's J System here is that it's a totally solderless installation. This is what they claim. It comes packaged in a nice box. We'll be doing the unboxing so you can see exactly what's in there, and we'll be installing it into that bass and then comparing the stock pickup sound to the sound of these active J pickups, and you guys can tell me what you think. So we'll get busy with that in just one moment. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is plug the bass into the GK amp. The amp is set totally flat. There's no pre-shapes or anything on it, it's just the sound of the bass. That will be going straight from the direct out and into the camera's input, and then when we change the pickups over, we'll do exactly the same thing, leaving the amp flat and just trying a few things and seeing what the differences are. We'll put them back to back and then we can compare them properly. So here's the EMG system in the box that it comes in. It's packaged very well. It's shipped in a box with recyclable materials, which is good to see. We'll just open this up. And of course there's a box within a box. And this is the EMG J System. So you have the bridge pickup, and on the American Fenders and Squiers it's a little longer for the bridge than the neck. I believe in the Mexican they're both the same size, they're both the short I think, but you can order them either way I believe. You get the control plate with the knobs attached, everything's right there. You can see that everything is mounted on a single circuit board. Everything has these slide-on connectors, making the connections really simple. There's a wiring kit and screws that come with that. They even supply a battery, a Pro Cell by Duracell, and it's got a little guard on the top so it doesn't short out. So it's nicely packaged. Everything's neat and tidy. I don't think I'm going to have any problems whatsoever installing this into the bass. You can see even the connectors there are protected by a bit of plastic so they don't get bent or damaged. And of course I'll hang on to the box. That way I can keep the passive system from the bass and store it in here in case I ever want to go back and make it passive again. Or the other good thing is you can, if you upgrade your bass, you can still use the same pickups, if it's of course as long as it's a J bass. So let's get busy and see how we install the system. So first things first, it always pays to, this was sitting at the top of the box, and these are the instructions. It always pays to maybe make a cup of coffee or tea, sit down and read through the instructions, which take you step by step through the installation process. And then you have a really good idea about what you're doing and how to go about it. So the first thing, even before I loosen off the string so I can get to the pickups, I'm going to remove the control cavity so that's out of the way. So that's the screws off, and the control cavity on the Jazz bass is quite simple. So there's actually not that much going on in there, and as usual I like to put a little bit of tape around where I'm working so I don't scratch the finish. That's just one of my habits. You can always peel that off before we screw in the new control plate. So we're looking for the cables that come from the pickups. There is a ground cable from the bridge right here. So we need to remove those with our trusty soldering iron. And I think that's pretty much all the desoldering done. The control plate's removed, and you can keep it exactly like that and resolder it if you want to go back to the passives. So now I'm going to remove the strings and insert the new pickups. Okay, now the strings are out of the way, we should be able to quite easily remove the pickups. Now here you can see we have some springs under the screws, which is really a cool way to do your height adjustment. So we're going to hang on to those. There's also a little bit of foam stuck to the bottom of these. So I wonder if we can peel that off. No, that's quite well stuck, so we might have to find another piece of foam. And just pull the cables through. That's it, really very simple to remove the pickups. We do the same with the other pickup. Presto, there you go, it's all removed. One thing we're going to have a look at here before we put these away and that is, if I line these up, you can see there's a slight difference in the length. So the longer one is the bridge pickup. So similarly with the EMGs, one will be slightly longer than the other. If I line these up, you can see the difference. So this guy here, here's the bridge, and that guy there is the neck. Now obviously we're going to put the springs underneath there so we can adjust them properly, but before we do that we've got to run the cables through. So they even include screws for the control plate and screws for the pickups in the packaging. There's a little Allen wrench which I imagine fits the Allen screw or the hex screw, whatever you want to call it, on the knob, so you can tighten them up, which is very thoughtful. They give you a few stickers too. There you go. So first things first, we need to work out how these go on. And if we look at our diagram here, it shows us that if we're holding the pickup this way, I'll pop the plastic cover off now, the red wire goes to my left just like that. So that's the way it works. So what we're going to do is pass these cables through first, and now there's both the same length. On one end you can see that the red is for you to power them from the battery. So we need to pass these through, and this is a bit tricky, this part, because the connectors won't exactly fit through the holes. You might have to strip that back a little bit and try and do these one at a time. Put the red one through, which provides the power. The preamps in these pickups are actually in the pickups buffers or whatever, all the electronics, and they're very well shielded. And one thing I like about EMG is they are super quiet, so you don't get that single coil hum when you solo one of them, which is great in the studio. Which is this baby here, and we plug that in. With the red cable to my left as I look at the back of the pickup. As per the diagram, and I can pull that wire through. Try and keep the wires away from the areas where the pickup screws go, and I will try and sit the screws in there. And the springs. And again, this bit's a little bit finicky because you're trying to hold everything together and kind of only have two hands. So now I've got both pickups in and wired, and just here, that's the earth wire for the bridge, which I don't think is required on the EMG system. So I'll put some shrink wrap over it, and I'll just tuck it in the corner of the control cavity in case I ever want to go back and refit the passive system. And now we get to the point where we need to wire the control plate, and this says neck pickup, and it has black and white, and they're actually on the, I don't know if you can see that very clearly, but it does have the colors on here next to the pins. So black is the center, white is the outer edge, and red goes right there. And then we do the same thing with the bridge pickup. That will go with the white on the outside and the red on the other side, just like that. And that's fairly simple, and that means that these pickups are now connected to the control plate. Let's have a closer look. So now, following the instructions still, it's always a good idea. It's asking me to connect the output jack. Sleeve tip output. Okay, so I understand that this goes to the ring. The other end of it goes to the battery. So that's our red wire from the battery is battery positive right here. And now for it to work, I need to make sure I get the polarity of these guys right. Sleeve, which will be earth. Which is that one there. And this one will be the tip. And the important thing about that is that it's a stereo jack, and there's the tip which carries the signal. Then, because the cable that you're plugging in is actually a mono cable, the shaft of the mono cable will actually short the sleeve and the ring together to activate the battery. So if I'm following this, sleeve is the middle pin, and that would be the black wire, and then the white wire, which is carrying the output signal, goes there. And that, guys, is pretty much the whole thing. It's that's all connected now. So in true EMG fashion, when they say it's solderless, it typically is actually solderless. I'm not surprised. EMG they're a great company that makes some really good products. This is the third base I have installed EMG pickups in. The other one is my Blue Jazz bass, and the other one is my Goodfellow, which has I think DC 45 humbuckers with a 3-band preamp. The Jazz has your typical volume tone, just like this one. That's more than good enough for me. Okay, so the install was relatively easy. It was, as EMG claims, a solderless install. The only time I needed the soldering iron was to remove the existing pickup wires from the existing electronics and the bridge earth, which you don't use with the EMG system. So what we're going to do now is I'm going to switch the camera mic off, and again the amp is set flat exactly where it was. We'll play the same sort of lines and see what the difference in the level and the sound is, and then we'll have a bit of a tweak and a play and maybe a bit of a discussion. Okay, so the first thing I notice here is that when I solo a pickup, it has absolutely no noise at all. Even though the original pickups were not bad for that, they did pick up a little bit of noise. These are dead quiet. The other thing I notice is the high end is more open. It's brighter and it's got that little bit of sparkle on the top, and that comes from the pickups being active. You can actually have less windings on the coils. It gives you a greater frequency response at the cost of output. So because they have the preamps in there, that brings the output up, and I don't know how they manage to make them noiseless. I suspect that there's another dummy coil in there. There's two coils that are running as a sort of a split humbucker or something. I mean, they do sound like single coils. Now, a lot of people say that the EMGs are pretty bright. So yeah, they are bright. So what I find, I sometimes like to roll the passive tone here off. But if I want a really sort of modern scoop sound, I use the amplifier for that, because the amp is going to have a lot more flexibility and power in its EQ than an onboard system on the bass. So if I give that a little tweak now that we have a sort of a fairly flat and broad frequency response from the pickups, that's where I can really hear the difference, is on the snaps. And now it really sounds active because I boosted the treble a little. So I scooped the mids, I boosted the bass and the treble, and you get that sort of sound, which I couldn't quite get that from the stock pickups. It was close, but it didn't have that sparkle on the high end, didn't have quite the highs that this has. If I go to the bridge pickup, it's got quite a snappy sound. Again, you can roll that off to taste. So you can see the range there. So it gives you quite a bit of range with just the one passive tone knob there. So for some people it's not their thing. They really like the more vintage, slightly more burnished tone of passive pickups. Again, as I said, I like these because they don't make any noise. If you really want that active modern sound, you can get it by tweaking the tone controls on the amp, as we've seen there. If you leave it pretty much flat, you can get that more vintage sound. You can roll off the treble a little. The other thing is they've got a little bit more output because they are active, and you can, because the magnets in these are not quite as strong as they are in the passive pickups, you can actually set them a little closer to the strings. And sometimes if you're playing over the pickup, it kind of feels good to just feel it under the string there, right? Some people like that. The other thing I notice is, if I get overexcited with my thumb, with the passive pickups I kind of get a sort of a thud. It's hard to describe. It really makes the speaker just pop because the pickup is overwhelmed by that action. These are not. They kind of, you know, they don't do that. They stay cleaner. So that's the EMG J set active pickups. The only downside to this now is that when we're in between sets, I need to remember to unplug the bass to stop it draining the battery. Having said that, EMGs are very efficient. I think the quoted figure is 3,000 hours on a 9-volt battery. I've never tested that. I know in my blue one I've had I think that battery in there now for 2 years and it's still at something like 90%. So they do last a long time, particularly if you unplug between sets when you're not using, anytime you're not using the bass, unplug it to save the battery. So they don't require a lot of juice. And I think it sounds pretty good. I think it sounds pretty natural. If you tweak the amp, you can make it sound more sort of hi-fi modern. And I'd be interested to hear what you guys think. Anybody that's used this J system, have you noticed an improvement in the sound? Would you modify a $350 Squier bass with pickups that are worth almost as much as the bass? See, what I found is that the bass is quite a stable platform. It's quite well made, the fretwork's quite good. It works. It's been out on the road for a year, haven't had any problems with it at all. So I thought, yeah, why not, let's just put them in. You can always take them out and put them in a higher end bass if you wanted to. EMG do a good job. It's no accident that you find them in a lot of high-end instruments. They're very quiet. They take their stuff seriously. Everything is nicely packaged. The instructions are really easy to follow. And I've put my old pickups in here for safekeeping in case I want to go back, or if I want to sell the bass, I would keep the EMGs most probably. Probably the next thing I'm going to do, for the sake of just finding out what difference it makes, I'm going to get a Fender modern high mass bridge, because they're not actually that expensive, and swap it over for this sort of vintagey type bridge, and we'll do an A-B with that and see what difference that makes next ones. And that would be it for this bass. There'd be no other modification. But anyway, tell me what you think in the comments. I hope you liked the video. I hope you liked the comparison. I hope it helped you to maybe decide whether to go active with EMGs or not. And I look forward to doing the next one, and we can discuss what we think of the high mass bridge against this standard one. So up until then, keep playing bass, keep making music, keep well, and we'll see you at the next video.